Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Jobscan's third annual No Fear Job Search Virtual Summit. Whether you're tuning in for the first time or you've caught a few of our earlier sessions this week, we're happy to have you here. Just as a reminder, we created this webinar series as a way to connect some of the best career experts with our job seekers in order to supercharge your job search. And as an FYI, these sessions are being recorded and they will be available on our YouTube channel later this week. We will also be sharing the slide decks if they're available. We'll be sharing them with all registrants. As a thank you for attending, we are offering 20% off Jobscan Premium. If you've attended other sessions, it's the same link we've been using all week. It is in the upper right-hand side of your screen. It may be a little bit covered, but that promo code is just jobscan.co/promo/nofear2022. And we'll mention that again later. We also have a giveaway going on this week where you can win 6 months free of Jobscan Premium. In order to enter, just go to sweepwidget.com/c/jobscan to enter. I'll mention that again later, and I'll stick that in the Q&A as well, so you can see that link. You can earn entries there by either sharing this event on Twitter or LinkedIn using the link on that giveaway page, or entering the unique code for each session. We have a special code for every single session, so you can get multiple entries to that giveaway based on how many sessions you attend. I'll be giving out that code closer to the end of this presentation. Finally, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's session, Ashley Watkins, who is a job search and interview coach. Ashley will be presenting on cover letter optimization. Feel free to ask any questions for Ashley in the Q&A box, and we will address them throughout the presentation. Welcome, Ashley. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm happy to talk to you about cover letters and answer any questions that you may have about whether or not you need the cover letters. We'll talk about some cool stats, and then I'll also teach you some effective strategies on how to make your cover letter stand out among the pack and make sure that you're keeping your cover letter slim and trim, and that's 250 words or less. So let's jump in. All right, so I'm Ashley Watkins. I'm a nationally certified resume writer. I'm also a job search coach with Right Step Resumes, and I work with mostly mid-career to executive level clients. And I've been recruiting for about 20 years or so, not to date myself. I'm still young. But I also wanted to mention that I was Jobscan's 2019. I landed on their list, the 2019 top 15 career experts to follow on LinkedIn. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, go ahead and do so. I am Ashley. You can find me at Ashley J. Watkins, but if you type in Ashley Watkins, you'll be able to find me there. So I hope to connect with you soon. And just be sure to mention that you attended this session so I'll know where I found you. But today what you'll learn is who reads cover letters, and really learn the how and why behind whether when hiring reps choose to read the cover letters or not, what truly grabs their attention. Also, I'll teach you how to KISS, how to keep your cover letters 250 words or less. And then we'll talk a little bit about branding. I'll give you some tips on how to infuse your personality if you need to explain something that may have happened in your career, or if you want to just add that extra value to your cover letter. So I'll give you some neat tips and tricks for how I write my cover letters and how I teach others to write their cover letters as well. So what is the purpose of cover letters? I'm going to talk about why you need a cover letter. So first and foremost, it helps you introduce yourself to the reader of your resume or your documents or your application, your portfolio, whatever it is that you're submitting at the time. It also is a way to summarize your value to the employer. So if you save money, if you've made money, if you've implemented processes, if you're an accountant and you're wanting to talk to them about ways to minimize their risks when it comes to their balance sheets and taxes and that kind of thing, you want to make sure that you're adding your value to that cover letter. It's also used for networking purposes. That's part of the reason why I like to keep my cover letters really short and sweet, because they serve as multi-purpose. So it's not just a cover letter that you'll submit and then maybe it doesn't get read, maybe it does. You can use it for networking. So if you want to email your resume to somebody, say it's a cold email and you don't know them and you want to introduce yourself to them, you can use your cover letter for that. If you use the KISS format. And then it's also to clarify information. Sometimes things happen in our careers. So say, for instance, I work with clients who may have been in high-level leadership roles, and maybe they've retired and then they want to come back to work. And so, or they want to do something different in general. And so to be able to explain that to the reader of your resume, so they understand why you're submitting a resume that has a lot of marketing stuff on it, and now you're targeting an accounting role. So it helps you to tell a little bit more of your story that may not be as appropriate for you to, list that information directly on your resume. So it helps you speak for yourself, explain gaps, explain your desire to relocate to a new city, any change that you may want to make. Also, it's a way for you to request and secure an interview. That's really what the purpose of those of your cover letter actually is. So I think it's a great way. If you use these tips to keep it short and sweet, then it's a wonderful way to use a multi-purpose cover letter. So let me jump into some stats real quick. So people want to know, do people really read cover letters? Are they necessary now? Have cover letters gone away? Are they a thing of the past? So there was a survey done by Office Team that said that 86% of executives actually said that they read cover letters. So that means that there's a whopping 13% of people who aren't reading them. So if 86% of executives are actually reading the cover letters and find value in them, why are more people not submitting cover letters to the right individuals? Office Team also said that 8 out of 10 managers said it's common to receive electronic resumes accompanied by a cover letter. I know in my recruiting position right now, I do receive emailed resumes that have cover letters with them. I, as a recruiter, may not necessarily read every single cover letter because of volume. I may get 100 to 200 applications for a particular position, where my hiring manager may not only see a small fraction of those candidates, right? Because my job is to narrow down to the best of the best. So that manager is more likely going to read a cover letter for an individual who's qualified for the position. They want to learn as much about the candidate as possible before they interview them. JobVite also did a survey that said that 47% of job seekers do not submit cover letters. So, something's not adding up. If 86% of leadership says that they want to see the cover letters, then why are only, less than half of candidates receiving, actually submitting those cover letters? If I would give my personal opinion on that, most of the time when we're getting advice, we're getting a lot of career advice from, say, recruiters. Right? So if you follow a lot of recruiters on LinkedIn, or you follow people who have been in that recruiting space, they may tell you that they don't read cover letters. But that's the thing. There are more people involved in that hiring process than just the recruiter. So while I may not read every single cover letter that comes across my desk, there's a hiring manager who's the exact opposite. And they look forward to that cover letter, because a lot of times, especially in leadership roles or in administrative positions as well, if you're responsible for any sort of internal or external communication, the cover letter is a way for them to see your writing style, to see your communication style, how you put your thoughts together. If you're someone who is involved in, say, marketing a product, or persuading a group of people to do a thing, whether it's to buy something, to do something, right? A lot of that communication comes across written. So your cover letter is a way for them to get a snapshot of how you communicate from a written standpoint. So it gives them an idea of whether or not, you may be someone who they would trust to put in front of, tons of their customers or tons of their stakeholders. Right. So really, I would always advise to err on the side of safety. Even if your cover letter doesn't get read, all right, great. So what? If it does get read and that tips the scale, because that's a deciding factor between you and someone else who you're neck and neck in your job search, and then your written communication or your persuasiveness, your personality, your branding is what tipped the scale. Why not do it? Why not take that chance? You really only have to write your cover letter one time. And then from there, you're just making those slight adjustments to it because you should be targeting your cover letter the same way that you're targeting your resume. So if you are submitting a cover letter to a marketing position, your resume should also be marketing, right? So they go together. So if you know you're targeting those same types of positions, the example that I'll give today is for a talent acquisition manager, because I'm in that recruiting space. So that's where I'm most comfortable to give those, true to life examples. You want to, give it an opportunity to, to really be able to sell yourself and set yourself apart. So you will kind of get into detail with that. I won't jump ahead too much. All right, so here are the main reasons why cover letters actually don't get read, is because they typically have a cookie cutter template. So that means if you went to Google and said, let me Google a cover letter template, I need to put something together, I want to apply for this job. So you hit Google, and then a search came up, and then you had it on the first page, you grabbed it, you started to edit the information, you put your info, you just plug and play and go on about your day. Right? So there's no personality in it, because anybody who's Googled that same cover letter, who's done that same search, will have that exact same cover letter. And we can tell a cookie cutter template, whether it's your resume or your cover letter, we can tell it from a mile away because we've seen it all. The cover letters typically are too long. Think about how you feel if someone sends you an email and you open it up and there's paragraph upon paragraph upon paragraph. And that's your first time ever getting a message from someone. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. This is a bit much. So, I'm going to teach you how to scale that information down, still get the same bang for your buck, but just, saying the most with the least amount of words. And then also a mistake that I see people make quite often is that their cover letter does nothing more than just regurgitate their resume. That's all it does. It summarizes everything on the resume. And then therefore it makes it unnecessary. And I don't want to read it, because if I want to know what's on your resume, I'll just read your resume. So those are some mistakes. So some examples of some of the openings of the cover letters that let me know that those cover letters are templates is they start with, this letter is in regards to your opening for whatever type position. Okay, yeah. So you're not grabbing my attention. So already I'm bored. I'm over it. Okay. And then it may start with something like, attached is my resume for your review. Well, I know you've attached the resume. You're interested in this job. So don't fill the cover letter with fluff and a lot of no-brainer information. You want to get the most bang for your buck. So in your opening paragraph, for the cover letter, there are some essentials that you need to have. So first you want to get the head nod. And by the head nod, I mean, so now I'm like, okay, all right, she understands it, she gets it, right? So, you want to capture the reader's attention right away. You want to make sure that they are zoned into what you're talking about, and that they will continue to read your cover letter from start to finish, or at least the majority of it, right? You want to start off with a question or a statement that the recruiter or the reader of your cover letter will actually agree to. So again, that's how you get the head nod, because they can agree to it. And you want to first and foremost explain, why are you here? Why did you email me just out of the blue, unsolicited, or why are you applying for this position? This is what your every cover letter needs to have. Capture the reader's attention very quickly. The first sentence or paragraph, the question, you have to grab their attention there, and it needs to explain why you're there. So here's an example of a cover letter opening that I used for someone who was applying to a talent acquisition manager position. So building a high-performing team and streamlining internal business processes play key roles in a company's ability to attract and retain the best talent pipeline, right? So right away, if I'm a recruiter, I know this statement is true. I know this statement is important for what we do, just as a general business, right? So I'm going to agree to that. So right away, I feel like, okay, this person may belong here because they understand it, they get it, they understand what the issue is. And so then the person went on to say, as your new talent acquisition manager, because again, you're going to be positive and confident in how you communicate your ability. So you're telling them right away, look, I'm your next person. I'm your new talent acquisition manager. And as that person, this is what I'm going to do. I'll collaborate with hiring managers, business leaders, and HR partners to transform the way you maximize hiring solutions to recruit top performers and drive long-range business growth. What company would not be excited to have someone who gets it at this level? Right? So they know what it takes to be a successful recruiter. They know what it takes. They know that it's important to build that team in order to do that. So where did I find this information? How do I know that this is what the company wants? Well, the first place that you look is actually at the job posting. So, and I'll show you later on how I grab that and what, and what that's called and how you put it all together. So that's what you do for your first paragraph. So in your second paragraph of the cover letter, you're going to add your proof. This is where you're going to show everything, all the value that you have. So you're going to generate interest and desire. You'll back up what you've said. So if you've said in your first paragraph that you understand how to build, that the teams are important and building those teams are important for, for doing something, or for creating certain processes is important for saving money or saving time or whatever, then you should be able to back up examples of how you've done that. So use your accomplishments from your resume. So that's something that you can pull in. So it's not necessarily regurgitation. You're drawing their attention to something that they'll see, and probably in a little bit more detail in your resume. So here are a few things. This person was promoted 6 times within their company. All right. They saved half of the, they saved 550 K by collaborating with different teams and working with certain vendors. They also partnered with internal leaders across 25 states. So that's a lot. So that gives an idea of the coverage. It gives an idea of the impact that they're able to make in a positive way. And then they also gave some stats about their ability to recruit. So they surpassed their recruiting goal by 35% and had about 60 recs when they were able to do that. So that says a lot about this person's ability to be able to get the job done. And they're also speaking that employer's language. So we know those things are going to be important. Saving money, saving time, performance is something that's really good. The ability to build relationships, all of that will be important to that particular employer. So before we go any further, do we have questions? Do you have questions about the first and second paragraph of your cover letter?
We have tons of questions.
Okay. All right. Let's jump in with a few.
Let's see. What is your view of well, this isn't super cover letter related, but let's ask it anyway. What is your view about a recorded video interview? Job seekers put links of recorded video interviews in resumes so that managers can open the links and watch them.
I think anything that you can do that adds further value, that doesn't take up a lot of space, is something that's great. If you are someone introverted like me, surprisingly, I'm an introverted extrovert. So I prefer to be, kind of behind the scenes and not necessarily on camera. So I cringe at the thought of having to do a video interview, because everything I think I want to say, I'm worried about, okay, how do I look? Do I sound stupid? Is my hair sticking up? What's going on? So I prefer not to have those. For those people who are, are more out there and more gutsy and want to take that chance, and you have a really clean, clear, and concise video, absolutely. Add an intro to your LinkedIn photo. So when someone visits your page, they can click there and there's a video talking about who you are. If you want to infuse that into your resume and your cover letter, I say go for it. If it's just simply a link where you would put it more so at the top with your contact information, where you would put a personal website or something like that, I would say go for it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Can you expand on the difference between a cover letter and the summary statement on your resume?
Yes. So the cover letter is actually a physical document. It's something completely separate from your resume. So the cover letter, again, it's there to introduce yourself. It's there to really explain to the reader of the resume why you're submitting your resume. And it also helps you to answer any background questions that may not be appropriate to discuss on your resume. The summary statement of your resume really is there to give your brand or your value proposition. So it's there to explain who you are, what you do, and how you add value before the person digs into your education, your experience, or anything like that. That's what the summary statement is. It's really just a brief overview of your value add. Basically, that's what that is.
Okay. And what about when applying to jobs online? Some give the option for including a cover letter, but many don't. What do you recommend in that situation?
In that situation, you can easily, if there's not a place for you to upload additional documents, because typically there is, but in that situation where there's not an additional section, you can reach out to or find someone who works in the human resources department at your target company and ask, I have some additional information that I'd like to share regarding my application, but there wasn't a place to do that in your system. What would you suggest? And that person will probably, maybe they'll share the name of the hiring manager, maybe they'll connect you with the recruiter, recruiter, they may be able to give you some insights on what to do. If you land an interview, there's always opportunity at that point, because now you have an insider connection, whether it's the recruiting coordinator, your scheduler, or your recruiter. You can ask to submit that information at that point.
Okay. And then we have quite a few questions about the actual logistics of attaching a cover letter. So
Mhm.
if you're emailing your resume, should you use the cover letter in the text of the email? Should you have it be the first page of your resume attachment, or should you have two separate document attachments?
So I would suggest either of those, except do not combine your cover letter and your resume into
Okay.
one single document, because they are different. They are very different. If you're emailing the information, if you're using the KISS format that I'm teaching you today, you can easily use your cover letter as the body of your email, right? And then that way you're still submitting a cover letter and you're attaching your resume. And that way they don't have two attachments to try to keep up with at that point. But yes, you can absolutely use your cover letter in the body of your email, or you can just attach it. But it's almost like you'll have two cover letters, because you have to say something. You can't just send the email with no context whatsoever and then just put the attachments there. So I would say just a better way to do it and introduce yourself and call attention to things that you need to call attention to. Go ahead and just put it in the body of the email, but you could easily do either. But my preference is to write a short cover letter that can be used as an attachment in a system, attachment to an email, or the body of the email.
Okay. And then we have somebody asking, should a cover letter be very simple and traditional, or should you use some sort of fancy template from Canva or some other program to show your personality a little bit more?
Right. So remember, content is king or queen. And so you want to make sure that whatever you do, that you're not using something that someone else can easily copy and paste. So again, like I said earlier, stay away from templates. You can use them as a guideline, but you want to make it your own always. I always opt for short and sweet, because that's just how we communicate these days. Very, very short and sweet. And, so I would stick with those guidelines for sure. When it comes to infusing your personality, I wouldn't go too crazy with the bunch of templates that you find on things like Canva, because a lot of times they don't translate into the applicant tracking system. Your cover letter should match your resume, so they look like they're two, cohesive documents, that they belong together. So as long as you have one that matches the format of your resume, you should be okay. But remember, you don't have to have all of the bells and whistles. They're nice if you have those formatting elements to your documents, but they are not necessary. Content is going to rule over everything. So you can have a very pretty document, but if you're not talking about the things that are important to me and how you'll make a difference as an employee hired into this particular position, then a pretty document is just, it really is a moot point. So just make sure whatever you do, that the content is speaking to the readers, what's important to them, to their goals and values.
Okay. And let's just do one more question here, because
Okay.
this has probably been the number one question this whole week with all of our presentations. And I think with cover letters, it's probably a particularly important question. How do you recommend addressing gaps in your employment, whether it's because of a layoff, caring for family members, raising children? Is that something that you should mention in your cover letter? Or what do you think?
So that's actually a very, very good question too. And I'm going to address that later in the presentation.
Okay.
So stay tuned. We'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
So
Great.
again, we'll jump back into the second paragraph and adding that proof. So again, you think about your accomplishments, the ones that are the strongest that you have from your resume, and infuse those into the second paragraph of your cover letter. And then in your closing paragraph, this is where you want to seal the deal. So you notice this cover letter only has 3 paragraphs. And by paragraphs, I mean just a couple sentences each, right? So you seal the deal. So you're going to tie it all together and let them say, look, this is what happened in my career. This is how I got here. And this is where I see myself next with your organization. Clarify any pertinent details. If you want to relocate, if you have gaps, again, and here's an example of what I used for this particular client who was actually laid off. I was in a similar situation, having been laid off, and I submitted my resumes initially with no cover letter, with no sort of context, and I wasn't getting any callbacks, right? And so then when I started submitting a cover letter with it, explaining those things, I got less questions about that, and I felt like I was being less judged because I put it out there. Hey, I got laid off. I'm available for work ASAP, and I'm open to relocation because I have nothing tying me to my hometown. I would love to be a part of this area. That's what I use to infuse my personality into it. Make sure that whatever you do, you have a call to action, and that you say thanks instead of please. Right. And the reason why I say that is because you should be applying for positions from a place of confidence. Please, to me, when you said, please do this, for me, please do it. Although you're being polite, it could come across as a little bit timid. So just get to the point of what you want to do, and you can be courteous without, if you're just compelled to say, please, please do whatever, fine. I just choose not to do it because I choose to operate from a place of confidence, from a place of, you want me, you want me, and it would be in your best interest to hire me. That's the place I come from. I may not say that necessarily, but that's the type of energy that I want to submit with applications, because that energy comes back to you. So I always choose to say, thank you, and be sincere, about my thanks to that. But I don't say, please give me a call. Please reach out to me. I don't say any of that. I just say, I can be reached here. Call me. Let's set something up. I take more of a call to action standpoint versus an asking, for certain things. Right. So in this situation, someone was laid off, and so they knew that they were going to be laid off. So they were able to submit this as the last part due to no fault of my own. My position was eliminated. Right. So right away, they can see that why this person hasn't worked for a number of months. And then, I welcome the opportunity to discuss how we can work together and build and execute recruiting strategies. Again, you want to tie it all together for the reason why you're here. And this was in this particular case, this was for a recruiting opportunity. Let's schedule some time for an interview soon. You can actually be specific and say, let's schedule some time. I'm available Monday through Friday at such and such time. You definitely can do that. And then thank you for your consideration, sincerely. And then you sign yourself. So that's basically what I do to the closing paragraph. Let's tie it all together. So this is what the actual cover letter looks like. And this one is 226 words. Okay, remember, we're keeping them at 250 words or less. So again, this is the opening paragraph. This is the middle paragraph, which is really just a summary of different highlights that we want to call attention to. And then there's the explanation of the gaps. So you can actually explain, I recently got married and we relocated to whatever area, or, if there was a death in the family and you had to close out someone's estate and now you decided to, to move to the area, whatever reason it is, just briefly state it. You don't have to go into a whole lot of detail. You don't have to say that you were sick. You don't have to, you really don't even have to say that you got married. You can just say, I'm moving to the, to the area, or, just after, managing for 15 years or so, I found that my passion is more in, project management, just to let them know why you're applying for a position that seemingly could be a demotion, right? But it's just that you want to switch, like you did something for, for a certain number of years, you retired, now you want to do something else, or you've done something and realized that it just wasn't your thing and you want to do something else. There's a way for you to explain that in your cover letter. So again, this is the full letter. And then I will give you another example as well. So this is another position where this person was applying for an administrative executive assistant position. And again, we've got the first paragraph, the second paragraph, and the closing. And this letter was 217 words. Again, we kept it really short and sweet. Right? Do you have any other questions? I see the Q&A box is lit up, so let's jump into these questions.
Yes. How would the cover letter formula here look different for a new college grad or someone that doesn't have a lot of related experience?
It's not going to look any different. You have value no matter where you are in your career. So what someone else may focus on as far as the difference that they made from a job standpoint, you may look at your school projects. You may look at clubs that you are a part of. You may look at your honors, focus more on your educational achievements and how they tie into the job that you want. So you still would use the same format. You're pulling the snag content from the job posting. You're pulling the information directly from you're looking at this information and saying, look, this is what the employer wants. This is how you use this information to, to show that you are fit for that. So again, even if you're a college student, you still have ways to show your value.
So the cover letter then, it does need to be updated for every single job.
Yes. So you shouldn't be rewriting your cover letter because you have a lane, right? So if you're marketing, then your cover letter is focused on what's important to marketing. If you're in business development, it's going to be, a certain thing. If it's sales, if it's IT, the core of your letter will remain the same. The only thing that you may be updating is that first sentence and how you use the snag content from a job posting. And then by snag content, I mean, the job posting is giving you the blueprint of what they want. Right? It's giving you that blueprint. So if you see that they're saying, I need you to build a high performing team, or I need, this position will help to build processes that minimize risk. All right, then those are the things that you need to be talking to. So you're only adjusting slight things. And of course, you're going to adjust who you're writing the letter to, the company or the person that you're addressing. And if you don't know the person's name, because not all the time do they have the person's name on the posting, you can just put hiring representative or recruiter or something along those lines.
Okay. And yeah, we talk a lot about using like a master resume and updates on that master resume. So it sounds like you can kind of have a master cover letter too that you're just adjusting.
Yes, you're using the exact same thing when it comes to your cover letter. So you should be adjusting them at the same time. So if you're putting some detail in your resume that's relevant to the position, make sure that your cover letter in some way speaks to that, even if it's just sharing the competency. So maybe if you're giving an example on your resume of how you minimize risk, then maybe you just want to mention risk management in your cover letter.
Okay.
And whatever's important to the employer, that's what you need to be talking about in your cover letter. And what's important is going to be generally near the top of the job posting.
Okay. I saw somebody ask earlier, how does that second paragraph that's mostly bulleted, how does that differ from the actual resume? Are you pulling these directly from the resume?
You can, so you can pull it directly from the resume, or you can take a piece of it. And so on your resume, your accomplishment bullet should give your result and then how you did it.
Okay.
Right. And so maybe on your cover letter, you give the result, right? But you don't tell the how, because they have to read your resume to find out the how. Right. So you can use the suspense method is what I call it. So you're telling them something that you did, but you're explaining how on the resume. And the only way that they know that how is by reading your resume. So it's not a complete copy and paste. It's more of a reword. So you're rewording something. You may be giving just a glimpse of something that you did. Maybe you're calling attention to something that's already on your resume. So it's okay if you copy and paste, verbatim, but you may just not want to give it all up at that particular point. Summarize it a bit.
Now this actually is probably the number one question ever that I'm sure you hear all the time. Is it better to attach a cover letter as a Word doc or a PDF?
I would say either or. The only benefit that I would see to attaching your cover letter as a PDF is if you're actually going to put your signature there. Then you'll put it as a PDF. Otherwise, it wouldn't translate, for a Word document. But the best way to decide what format to use, whether it's Word, PDF, or some other format, right? Look at the employer typically will tell you at the upload point what types of documents are acceptable. And as long as you're using one of those formats, you should be okay. But typically Word or PDF works. Either way, it's truly your preference. I'm not going to rule somebody out just because they used a Word document over a PDF.
Yeah, I think that's what
the PDF typically just helps you maintain the integrity of your formatting. So that could be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's what most of our presenters have kind of agreed on this week. And someone mentioned earlier in the week that if you're worried about a PDF not scanning into an ATS correctly, you just need to make sure you can highlight it. And
Yes,
as long as that PDF, the content in it is highlightable, that
right,
means that it's also scannable. So
exactly.
I think that's a good thing to remember with cover
Mhm.
letters as well, because I know cover letters are scanned into ATS sometimes as well.
Yes, they're scanned into the ATS, but they're not necessarily a part of the scoring process for the ATS.
Okay.
Yeah, your resume is what is used for the scoring piece of it. The cover letter is more so for the human.
Okay.
Where the ATS passes, whether your resume passes 3 points, so it has to get through the ATS. And then it has to get to that first point, which may be a recruiting coordinator. And then it reaches the next level, which is those decision makers, the final decision makers. So it's 3 layers. Your cover letter typically just makes it to, it can make it into the ATS, but it's not involved in the scoring or the evaluation of your resume. It's your portfolio as a whole that is looking for. But if you're applying into a system where they provide a score, the score is specifically for your resume, not your cover letter. So don't think that you can write a resume that has very little keywords in it, and then you can stuff all of your keywords into your cover letter and then still make the cut. It doesn't work like that.
Okay, that's interesting. I never knew
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So if you're applying for multiple jobs with the same employer, should you submit a different cover letter for each role or just submit the same cover letter for all of those jobs?
There should be something different about each of those jobs that you can switch it up a bit.
Yeah,
And just think about even when you do thank you notes and you're submitting those thank you notes to
right.
employers, you definitely want to make sure that you're personalizing each of them, because even if a panel interviewed you, they are each individual. Each of them are individuals. So you want to make sure that you're personalizing it to that person. So if you're interviewing with a panel, typically they have different positions. So focus on what's important to that person. So again, each position that you're applying to, focus on what's important to that position. And it can
Okay.
seem kind of odd if you're applying to 5 different positions that maybe kind of sort of, if it's the same job, then, of course, maybe it's the same job and it's in a different state, right? There's not that big a difference, right? But if you're applying to multiple positions and and those positions have slightly different things, like one may work on project management, something else may be in marketing working on the sales piece of it, something else may be working on the campaign piece of it, right? You want to speak to those different aspects.
Yeah, it's probably similar really to when you're writing thank you notes to like family members
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you find yourself writing almost the exact same thank you note and you're like, oh, but what if one of them sees this and how do I make it a little bit different? So I'm sure you have to
Absolutely.
get a little bit creative with it.
Yep. You have to let them know something, especially maybe reference the gift that they got so they know that you're writing it
Right.
directly to them, right? So it's something has to be there to let them know that it's personalized directly to them.
Yeah. Um, Somebody asks, let's schedule some time for an interview soon, going to come off as cocky to a recruiter?
No, and if it does, do you want to work for that organization for someone that doesn't even give you the permission to ask for what you want?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
So, ask for what it is that you want, because think about it with the commercial. If they show you a picture of a burger, right? But they never tell you how good the burger is.
Mhm.
They never tell you where to go find the burger. They never tell you when this new burger is going to be available. How do you know what to do? Are you going to be compelled to go digging around and finding it? No.
Right.
So you are advertising yourself. So what you're doing is that you're putting a call to action. Call me now. If you see like a lot of those attorney commercials, call us. Call us now to get your check today, right? That's the call to action. That's not cocky. It's truth. Let's
Yeah,
schedule some time. I want to interview with you.
right. I think I think a lot of people are probably in this boat right now. Somebody says I was working as a contractor for 9 months until this past September when the company decided they no longer wanted to use contractors. Should I mention this in my closing or should you save that for the interview if you're asked or what?
Yeah, I always assume that you won't get the interview, right? So don't say things that could tip the scale on whether or not you get that interview, thinking that
Okay.
you have an opportunity to do it in the interview, right? You only have that opportunity if you know you have that opportunity. At the point of application, you don't know whether you have another opportunity to speak for yourself or not. So in that case, I would just say after a 9-month assignment, my company made the difficult decision to no longer use contractors. Boom, there you go. Now it's out of the way. You don't have to worry about being, questioned or grilled to death about why you have this gap in your job or why you were let go from this company. You've already explained it. You've put it out there. Let's move on to the important stuff. Like, how much are you going to pay me? What's up? Do I
Yeah.
get the job? Right? Get it out of the way.
So
anything that you think could be a hiccup or a roadblock in your job search when you're applying, add it to your cover letter to go ahead and
okay,
do that.
I like that. And on the flip side, someone says they had two jobs and they resigned from both. Is that something that I should explain as well?
It depends on what the reasoning was. Was it just you did, resign from those jobs to go work somewhere else, or are you no longer working? I'll answer it from a place of you've resigned, but you're no longer working. You may want to use your cover letter and even your resume to explain what you've been doing in the meantime. So if you've been volunteering, if you have been going to school, if you've been caring for a family member, or whatever, you took a personal sabbatical, use that as an opportunity to explain that.
Yeah, and this is always the point where I interject and say, don't be ashamed of your gaps in employment
Yes, we
because
all have them. It's life.
everyone
Life
has them.
happens. Yes, and especially I feel like one of the good things that came from the pandemic was that it gave us permission to just be human,
Definitely.
have things happen, to not be okay, to be, afraid, to have gaps, to stop working, to choose family first, right? So use those opportunities of this mindset shift to sort of lean into that.
Yeah.
And never be embarrassed about being laid off. I was laid off, and look at me now. I got another job. I lived to work another day. Right. I lived to to help another job seeker get a job. But at the time, I did feel quite ashamed, especially when it was time to go home for the holidays, because I got laid off 2 weeks before Christmas. And going home for the holidays and having to, people say, "Hey, what's up with work?" And I'm like, not working.
Yeah.
So in order for me to kind of get over that hump, so it wasn't a question, I sent an email to my family and I'm like, "Hey, you guys, I just recently, I'm not going to be giving gifts this year because I'm focusing my, focusing my holidays on my job search during this time off. Here is a copy of my resume. I'm looking for these types of jobs. I would love as a Christmas gift for you either to, to help me with something to wear to my interview, or to, send me a card with some words of encouragement." That took a lot of the, oh my God, I'm embarrassed about not
Yeah.
having a job, and flipped it to me now realizing my family cares about me. I'm a person. This thing happens to more than just me. And it's more real, so then I got to eat dinner without being grilled about why I was not working. Did you get fired? What
Definitely.
happened? Nobody asked me about it because I put it out there.
I think that's amazing advice, especially as we are kind of entering into this holiday season again. And unfortunately, this is a period of heavy layoffs again.
Yes.
And that's part of the reason we wanted to do this summit now, because
Right.
I mean, we have over 400 people on this webinar right now, and these are probably many of you are currently unemployed and others are wanting to make a career change. So you're not alone. And I think that's awesome advice for going into the holidays and taking some of the pressure off. And
Absolutely.
you're doing everything you can right now.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, the first and foremost, we all have our different reasons for, even if you got terminated for performance issues, there's a way to turn that negative into a positive. Even if you had, performance issues where you just weren't doing your job, maybe you were a terrible employee. I mean, whatever it was, you weren't always that way. Everybody has something of value,
Right.
from the least performing employee to the highest performing employee. So do some self inventory, really dig deep, and see what are those things that I did that I was really proud of. What lit me on fire? What are some things that I want to do in my next job? Where did you shine? Even if your employer did not give you credit for that, because not always do we get accurate credit from our superiors, right? So what are those things that you felt like you were proud of, and at the end of the day you went home and it was, it was soul sucking because you did this thing and then nobody said anything about it, or maybe somebody else took credit for it. This is your time to give yourself credit for the things that you are proud of, and for the things that you want to continue doing great in your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell
And
your own story.
I know we have a lot of career changers here.
Yes. I'll take
And
any questions, whatever we have, even if they're not related to cover letters, I'll take them.
okay,
We have the time. Let's do it.
great. People are wondering, how do you discuss in your cover letter or maybe even on your resume wanting to do a major career change?
Yeah. So for one, think about your why. What is the reason for your shift? Why are you wanting to shift? What is it that's drawing you to the shift? And then lean into that, right? So say for instance, you were I'm working with a client right now who's worked primarily in sales and in those types of roles. Well, those were sort of customer facing roles. So the customer piece of it is something that was, truly amazing, right? This client really, really enjoyed that, but wanting to shift and do something completely different by focusing mainly on the customer. Well, most positions were looking for somebody with a sales background. So we're able to use that sales background to shift into customer experience positions. Even though the job primarily that they had before was in sales, heavy goals, heavy quotas and stuff like that, but shifting more into being able to take those sales and knowledge of the companies and those products and helping the customer be great, selling them on, more on the intangible versus the tangible product that they were selling. I've worked with teachers who, say, you know what, I don't want to be in the classroom anymore. I want to work more with training when it comes to adults. So then we have to make that shift. Or, I've worked with individuals who've done something completely different where they may have just been in, I've had a teacher turn into a nurse, but it was because this person actually worked with special needs children in the classroom, but shifted over into nursing in the psychiatric division.
Wow.
So there was a tie. You can find that parallel, find what is similar. So you may not have done exactly what that job is asking for, but what did you do that was similar?
Yeah, and you always have transferable skills, even if the two careers seem completely different.
Exactly.
I know you mentioned this, but we're still getting a lot of questions about what if you don't know the name of the person that you are writing the cover letter to?
Then you can just use the generic term. Like I use hiring representative because I don't know if that person is going to be a recruiter, someone in HR, but you can use human resources, dear human resources, dear hiring rep, dear recruiter. Or if you know the position of the person, because sometimes they'll say reports to, this position reports to VP of whatever, right?
Okay.
So you can use that, whoever that title is, dear VP of, business services, or, whatever that title is going to be. So you don't have to know that person's name. Just whatever you do, don't use sir or madam, because that is completely outdated.
And I think another one that maybe is dated, but I want to hear your opinion. Someone's asking, what about to whom it may concern?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Go for dear hiring representative over.
Yes, we are trying to be modern. We are trying to grab attention. Yeah. And if you do it to whom it may concern, it doesn't concern me at all. Your job search, right? And so that in itself, like I said, it's an outdated practice. Just use dear in whatever position. Again, a general one that I like to use because it doesn't create a whole lot of fuss. It's hiring representative. So no matter if they're a recruiter, a hiring manager, or HR person, they're hiring rep.
Okay. And this is another really common question lately, for job seekers who are older, maybe over 50 in particular. They're very worried about ageism, which unfortunately is very real.
Yeah.
Is there anything that they should do with their experiences, listing their experiences out, if they're worried about showing their age based on their years of experience?
Yes. So the first and foremost, what you can do is trim your resume down to only the last 10 to 15 years of work.
Okay.
Right. So right there. Another quick thing that you can do is make sure that your email address is something that aligns with a modern email domain.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
a
means,
great one.
So Gmail is typically the golden,
yeah,
the golden child, right? But you can have something that's assigned to your own personal domain. But anytime you see something that is connected to an internet service provider, so you may have billsouth.net, you may have charter.net, or something like that, automatically mom and dad.
That is such a good point. I've never thought about that, but that's such a good point.
Yes. And then when you see things like Yahoo, AOL, those are typically older, and Hotmail, those are older domains, right? And they're less used by, in current day, they're less modern. So if you want to just make sure that you have a modern email address, and, nothing too crazy when it comes to just use your name. If your name is not available, use some numbers that are not assigned to your date of birth or your birthday period. Also your education. take the years off. You don't have to
Mhm.
put the years unless it's an official application that is asking for those years. But on your resume, it is not, even on your LinkedIn, it is not necessary for you to have your dates as far as your education. If you do have older experience that is relevant, and that's kind of what you're pulling from, then you can consider using those, using the number of years versus the actual dates. So if
Okay.
you worked somewhere for 7 years, but it was like 1991 until 1998, it's just 7 years, and you can have a point of early career, on you use your early career highlights toward the top of your resume. Now you still don't have to put those dates because the positions that you're referring to
Mhm.
are under the early career or earlier positions on your resume. And you can just do the number of years that you worked there versus the actual time frame. Because
And if
usually
you,
that information isn't verifiable anyway because it's too old.
right. And if
Even
you are,
me, I graduated in 2002.
Mhm.
I don't put my years on a
Yeah.
resume.
I heard one of our presenters actually said that yesterday, that even if you graduated like 5 years ago, you don't need to include your,
No.
your experience is what is the most important. So,
Mhm. Yep, it's
um,
always your experience. But if you're leading with your education and say your education is what's helping you make that career shift, then you can still list your education at the, towards the top of your resume, because that's how you decide the order in which your information is placed on the resume is
Mhm.
whatever's relevant. The most relevant information goes closer to the top. So if your education is what you're leading with, then it may be okay for you to put your years on there. They're not going to know, how old you are if you have, if you've got your degree this year, last year,
Right.
or even in the last 2 years. Just make sure that you're not putting things on your resume that are older than 10 to 15 years old.
Okay. And I think the question that's probably coming next is, what do you do if you don't want it to look like you don't have any experience prior to that 10-year mark? How do you kind of address that potential gap there? Is that when you would talk about early career experience?
Yes, and you can put just a simple one-liner to say earlier roles include positions as I don't know, marketing manager,
Mhm.
production manager, or whatever, whatever the case at these companies, right? So you just put a small little one-liner in there to talk about that. And you could even say include 7 years of experience in this. So they know that there's 7 years prior experience, but the dates is what's shocker, right? If I knew that you worked, I started working when I was 18, in all transparency, I'm 42. So I don't, if I put it on my resume, it looks completely different than I'm talking to you and telling you that I've been recruiting for over 20 years.
Right.
Right. It sounds different. It looks different. And when I see 19 anything, my little cousin told me that I was born in the 19th century. I didn't take that too well. 1900s. And so I'm like, really, really, this is what we're doing now. So when you get carded, just at the store, the kids are looking at your ID and they see 19 on there. They already know that they don't need to worry about
Yeah.
anything else, because of course you're old enough if you were born in 19 anything. And so it's just what the date looks like. So the number of years of experience, because some job postings ask for 10 to 15 years of experience, or 7 to 10, or or whatever, or 5 to 7. They're looking for somebody who, probably was working in the 90s or even in the, in the 80s, but it's not necessarily for you to put those dates there.
Mhm.
Talk about the
Um,
experience, not the time frame.
okay. Uh, this person says they have a child going to college now and they're leaving a less demanding job because they want to get back to their passion. Is this appropriate to include in a cover letter?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that could be a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to hear about your story. What happened? People live for this day, for the nest to be empty and for them to go on and do what they want to do, whether it's counting, the colors on a butterfly wing or whatever it is, especially those people that are on like HGTV and you ask them what they're doing and, oh, I count crayons for a living.
Oh
And
my
my
God.
budget
And
is
they
5
have a
million.
$2 million budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, those are conversation starters, especially if you took a year off for travel, to tour the world. Say that,
Yeah.
again, those are conversation starters. It's part of your story and it's not anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah. And what about, what's the best way to explain if you resign from an organization due to the workplace culture?
Then what you focus on is the type of culture that you want, not the kind of culture that you left. Right.
Okay.
So if you prefer a culture that is more inviting, that is family first, that is customer centric or whatever, say that.
Okay.
I'm looking for, these things, right? And this is what I desire. This is where I thrive. You don't have to talk about my workplace was toxic. My boss was a maniac. You don't have to go that far, into it, and don't be roped into those conversations. Focus on where you're headed.
Okay.
Focus on where you want to be.
This person they're out on short-term disability due to long COVID. And they're looking to work remotely instead of, make this more general, just instead of in office. How can they address this if they, are specifically looking for a remote job due to health?
You don't have to say your reason for looking for remote work. You just want remote work.
Okay.
I'm looking for remote roles that do these things. That's it. I don't need to know about the long COVID. And I'm so sorry about that. It's impacted my family. I know that could be really, really hard. My father-in-law has been dealing with long COVID for the past 2 years. So I do understand the need to want to work from home. He's actually able to, to retire. So I definitely understand that, but it is nobody's business the reason why you want to work from home.
Yeah. And remote work is
it's so commonplace
now. Yeah.
Maybe back when I started working remotely in 2012, and so and so that having to explain that, in that time, because people are like, what, you work from home, how in the world? You're sure you're working, but now it's commonplace, and a lot of employers are shifting to that. So asking for a remote role it's not a strange ask anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So own the fact that you want a remote role. You don't have to, to tell that it's because of an illness.
Yeah, definitely. And if someone's job was terminated, if they were terminated, can they still say they were laid off?
No. That would be lying. You don't want to lie on the, on any documentation, right? But what you can do with that is shift into what would you do differently, right? So if, say, you got terminated because you broke some sort of policy or whatever, you can talk about what you learned from that. But I wouldn't go too far into it when it, when it comes to a cover letter, unless it's something that for sure is going to come up and be a true roadblock. A lot of employers now are not even getting into the reason why you left, a previous job or whatever. But just in case they do, be prepared to talk about what happened very briefly. So you want to be honest, because one thing that means a lot is accountability and truth and honesty and, and transparency. But you don't want to dig down in the weeds about what happened. I made a mistake and did XYZ. What I've learned from that is this: going forward, this is how I make sure that type of thing doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Okay.
And rehearse that, because it will come up in the interview, and be prepared to, to say it again. So be comfortable with that reason. You don't have to say I was fired because I slapped my coworker, whatever that thing was. There's ways to frame it. If you don't know what to say, then you can talk to a recruiter. You can reach out to me, on LinkedIn or whatever, to ask a question, to get suggestions, to work with a coach that can help you confidently answer those questions.
Great. We probably have time for another 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. Trying to look for questions that will apply to everybody. Oh, this is great. Any advice for those retiring from the military and starting a new career? While we have a tremendous amount of skills, oh my gosh, absolutely. It is a completely new environment going from defense versus civilian sectors.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for your service. And thank you so much for this question. Find your passion. Figure out what it is that you liked about what you did, the work that you did in the military. I've worked with a client most recently, and we've become friends since, but she did logistics in the Marine Corps. And so from that, she was able to take her logistics experience and work for a civilian organization. And she's, moved up the ranks, but instead of doing, that actual logistics as it stood, as far as the military, she was able to do project management work. So think about what your job translates to in the civilian world, and then see and then just do some soul searching, do some searching online with positions, and see which positions match something that you may want to do, and see how your skills align with that. But yes, making that shift, I would definitely suggest working with a resume writer or a coach, interview coach or whatever like myself, who can help guide you in that direction so you're able to more fluently have those conversations, because you've been married to the military for a while. So that language, that jargon, you've got to shift out of that in order to be able to show how your skills do connect with the new position. But yes, absolutely, it can be done. And there are a lot of companies who do have veterans preference
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, that's
So
great advice.
don't hide from that. Make sure that you tell them, yes, I'm a veteran.
Yeah, I mean, talk about transferable skills. You've got
Yes.
a whole lot of them if you're
Mhm.
coming out of the military.
Leadership,
Critical
project management.
thinking. Mhm.
Yes, all of that.
Yeah. Well, we may have to just end it there. We are at the top of the hour here. Thank you so much, Ashley. This has been great. I know that was an amazing Q&A. We have
Yes.
tons of other questions, but I think we addressed a good number of them.
Good.
So thank you for being here with us today, and thank you everybody who attended. This was a really awesome session.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone.